Good evening. This work session of the School Board of Osceola Area Schools is being held in the Forum Room of the Educational Service Center on Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. The work session is being audio recorded. The recording will be made available on the district website within 2 business days after the work session is ended. With regard to the audio recording, our communication staff has asked that we share a friendly reminder that side conversations during the work session are picked up by the recorder and can affect sound quality. Also, conversations during transitions between agenda items are on the recording as well. The intent of the school board work session is to allow for school board discussion of topics. Work sessions do not include an opportunity for audience members to address the board. To acknowledge attendance this evening, I'll ask that all present at the table state their names, starting with the person to the left.
Kelsey Dawson, School Board Member.
Keith Day, School Board Member.
Erica Foster, School Board Member.
Brian Severson Hall, Executive Director of Community Engagement.
Kenny Bilal, Executive Director of Community Relations.
Alia Jiwa, Student Representative.
Thurston Vargas, Student Representative.
Hikma Adams, Student Representative.
Amy Dawson, District Level Principal.
John Morstead, Executive Director of Finance and Operations.
Steve Bliss, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary and Middle Schools.
Yvonne Schwartz-Lind, Executive Director of HR.
Amy Moore, General Counsel.
Sarah Mitchell, School Board Member.
Kim Heil, Superintendent.
And I, Thomas Brooks, School Board Member, am present. The purpose of school board work sessions is to build trust and teamwork, to exchange information, and when applicable, to provide direction in order to facilitate efficient and effective decision-making at regular board meetings. Dr. Heil, will you please share your check-in?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Brooks and our school board members. We'll start this evening with the legislative platform. So we'll have John Morstead will introduce Valerie online.
Yep. Thank you, Dr. Heil. Vice Chair Brooks, board members. So Valerie Doslin, who is the district lobbyist, is actually online with us virtually. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Valerie, and she's going to kind of provide a little bit of an update of where things are at with the legislature before we move into this next session, and then we'll talk our way through the platform after that. So Valerie, all yours.
Great. Thank you, John, and thank you, members of the board. I do appreciate accommodating a virtual presentation today. Quick update, over the course of the legislative interim, there have been numerous special elections. We do have currently 2 open seats in the Minnesota House of Representatives, but we expect those to be filled at special election in January. Minnesota Management and Budget, our state forecasting agency, released their economic outlook last week, which showed that we had a $2.47 million surplus for the current biennium, but an almost $3 billion deficit for the next biennium. The forecast is a result of higher income tax collections, but the deficit is a result of higher healthcare costs and slower economic growth. MNB officials did caution last week that it's important to remember that there are long-term risks in the forecast due to policy and funding uncertainties at the federal level. So looking to the 2026 session, which begins on February 17th, it's not a budget setting session, and it's typically one that will be focused on policy and maybe bonding. I would imagine the governor is going to put forward budget recommendations in January, and I would expect that will include budget reductions for the following biennium. Now, a number of issues are going to be top of agendas. You know, over the course of the fall, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not to have a special session, and ultimately the legislative leaders could agree to the parameters of a special session. So I would expect those issues to filter into the regular session. Mainly, those issues are gun control, school safety, but other issues that will be front and center include fraud and what to do about addressing fraud, as well as the impact of the federal budget that was passed on areas such as healthcare, SNAP, and concerns about cost shifting to counties. I also wanted to add that there have been a number of retirements announced. Most notably, Representative Lisa Damuth, the current Speaker of the House, announced that she's retiring to run for governor. And then education area, Senator Steve Swedzinski, the Senate Chair of the Ed Policy Committee, announced he is retiring, along with Representative Ron Krisha, the Republican co-chair of the House Education Finance Committee. And then lastly, Representative Kristen Robbins from the Maple Grove area announced that she is retiring because she is also running for governor of Minnesota. In the areas of K-12, I think a few issues that will be front and center include school safety, just kind of continued discussion about that issue in light of the shootings at Emancipation Catholic Church. You will see consistent in a number of different platforms, repealing the $250 million reduction for the special ed process CA that was passed last session, as well as continuing hold harmless for compensatory revenue. And then I would imagine there will be some additional discussion this year on paid leave, given the rollout of that requirement in January. And then there's a number of different interim working groups that have met over the summer. The first one is the Compensatory Revenue Task Force. They do not have to have their final report until October of 2026, but they do have to have a preliminary report due to the legislature by February 25th of this year. There's also a working group on the use of seclusion, and then a working group on the developmental delay special ed category. But I think the one of most interest to OSSEO will be the compensatory working group. That's all that I wanted to share today, and I'm available for questions.
All right. Thank you, Valerie. Should I, would you prefer we go through the list, or are there questions you want to ask Valerie first?
We can go through the list first.
Okay. So the legislative priorities for this year are similar to last year's. They are scaled down a little bit, knowing that it's, as Valerie said, it's not a funding year. If anything, I think the goal here is to try to maintain what we have, and obviously there's places where we're asking for them to make an increase, like local optional revenue. But probably the most important thing is maintaining current general fund formula to include the inflationary index. Late in the session last year, that came up as a let's pull that. It's an easy, low-hanging fruit thing that would solve a lot of budget problems right away. But it also takes away the thing the districts had fought for as long as I have been in schools and finally got, and this is the very first year that the inflationary index actually applied, is the current year we're in. So that's an important one to keep. The next one, and I'm not going to necessarily read, I'll go through these all, but not going to go through all the detail on them. Fund the summer unemployment insurance. So the previous session funded this last summer. So we've pretty much exhausted what we have. So going forward, we don't have a mechanism to pay for summer unemployment. And so that will, that'll be an issue, because that the legislature's going to have to decide, how do we pay for that? Is that just a straight hit to the general fund? Can we levy it like we do our other unemployment insurance, which would mean an increase to the levy? So that's a question. For us, we're looking at about $1.6, $1.7 million is what our number is. The local optional revenue, what we'd like to do is that's been, normally we get $724 per pupil. It's been at that number for, and Valerie'd have to tell me how many years, but a long time. So the $979 on here is the inflationary adjustment to catch it up, and then ask that it move at the same rate that the general formula moves. So it's still an increase formula ask to the legislature, but a lot less than if we said we just want to add this to the general formula. The priority 2, which is focused on school safety and support for mental health, increase Safe Schools funding to $108 per pupil to support the needs for scholars and staff, And again, expand allowable uses of long-term facility maintenance to include cybersecurity and technology infrastructure, hardware, and modifications of buildings to be able to utilize LTFM to pay for safety and security. Those were in the platform last year as well. Priority 3 is focused on the workforce shortage, so continue to expand programs and incentives to attract, develop, and retain teachers of color, and remove barriers and provide incentives to address shortages in the areas listed. The last one is kind of the standard item that sits on our platform all the time, which is reduce mandates, either fully fund or repeal unfunded mandates, refrain from adding new unfunded mandates, and try to, was added in last year, try to review and repeal any obsolete requirements in current law that can back out. So that's the platform. Again, it's a fairly simple version because it's not a funding year, so the asks just aren't there, and we know that they're going to be focused on looking past this year and looking at that big deficit. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Vice Chair Brooks.
Thank you. School board members, any questions?
Just clarifying, John, on the per pupil, it currently is $724?
Currently $724.
So that as of now, okay.
So essentially the number on there moves it from 724 to 979. That is adding inflation from when it started at 724 to today.
And how many years had it been? Sorry. Could you repeat?
I'm trying to remember. Valerie, do you remember when that was originally set? Local optional at 724? It was a
I
combination.
don't remember off the top of my head.
We used to have two pieces. We used to have a $424 local optional, I think, and then $300 board. A lot of the school board could vote to say we're going to just put $300 on the levy. And they, in one of the legislative sessions, they combined the two together and took that away and just said, we're just going to call this local optional, everybody gets it. So I want to say it's probably been 7-8 years, top of my head. I was around when it happened, so I at least know.
So for priority number 2, enhance school safety and support mental health, I submitted an item on the gun control legislation and expanding mental health supports. Did you receive that?
I did not.
Okay.
No, unfortunately, I didn't. I never got feedback from a board member on what should be on the platform. We got feedback from cabinet, but not a board member. So I apologize if I didn't get that from you. Can you tell me what it was?
Yeah, can you state it again?
Yeah, so it was enact stronger gun safety laws to reduce firearm access among students, require universal background checks, implement red flag laws, ban assault weapons and high capacity magazines. The second one was increase funding for school safety and mental health resources, expand access to school psychologists, and then the whole list. And that one also included school resource officers.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll get it.
Yeah, I think you can do that.
Okay.
Typically what we do here is if, and I guess we'll leave this to the board, we'll probably have to, Dr. Lyle and I can figure out how to send it out to you to see if you want it included, don't want it included, want to weigh in. Because ultimately, this is a platform we're going to ask you guys to approve to represent the schools. So we need the voices of all the school board members.
Yeah, I would like to see something, like, just to see what that would look like with some of those topics around mental health and more specific around gun safety. I had a question too around, we say that it says that this platform is a result of extensive collaboration and input from family, staff, and community members. So I was just kind of curious, when I was on the board before, we talked about a legislative committee because to engage our communities and to make sure, because a lot of times our priorities are pretty the same, they change a little bit, but I've always thought it was really important to even have more community voice that's really specific to the legislature because, I know we have a huge district, a lot of, city priorities, and I just think it's another way for our community to get really involved. And also I've seen in other districts, a lot of times that's also a pipeline for even recruiting other school board members to be part of that, because I think the more, so I was kind of curious around, I know it's not necessarily about the priorities, but I was curious around, I thought that there had been a draft committee, but we were curious of where that left off.
We had one for 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Participation was pretty limited. And then I think with all the other things spinning up, knowing that we were prepping everything for Build a Better Future and all that capacity just wasn't there to do it. I personally run 3 different committees between ECMAC, CMAC, and Fiscal. And so adding a fourth is on top of all the Build a Better Future things for me. I'm well beyond my capacity to do that. So I'm certainly open to whatever direction Dr. Howe wants to give us, but or at least provide for us administratively. But today, that's a bit of an ask for us to pull off, at least in my opinion.
It's just that a lot of other districts have them.
Mhm.
And so I think, I understand that, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I also think that it's an area, we're such a large district with so many different diverse voices, and I don't know like how we funnel those voices in this particular platform, but I think that for me that's really important, so I'd like to to explore it, to see what that would take or what that would look like, how that would even be structured.
The
My
actual-
prior district had it,
Yeah,
but it was run by board members and parents. It wasn't run by administration.
sure, that's why, maybe explore of like what are the options of setting something like that up, or what would that look like?
We're even doing it as part of one of our community conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think just explore like how do
Yeah.
we kind of, whatever that would be. Yeah. I mean, I've even seen boards like, they'll have like, I've talked to other school board members who, they'll do like a fall convening with that committee and some of the reps, with school board members and school staff a couple times a year, just to kind of have a pulse on. I mean, there's a lot of issues we could weigh on: immigration, gun control. I mean, a lot touches our schools, and what's important to our community I think is really important. And it's a way to engage, continuously engage people.
Yeah, and in January, we'll be talking about committees anywhere, and
Yeah.
Tanya and Thomas will be
Yeah.
reaching out as well, so it can be brought up then as well, so, yeah.
I do like Erica's idea though, of integrating it into an existing structure.
I really appreciate the emphasis on priority 1 and just continuing to say it to our lawmakers that this is a priority for our schools and that we need them to focus on this. So I think this is a well-written platform, and you'll get a hearty yes from me, so I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So I'll get your information, Thomas, and then we'll get it out to the rest of the board to get that input added on into it. So,
Thank you.
It'll be a fairly quick turn because we want to bring this to you, although we don't have to bring this to you next week. Because the session doesn't start till into February, we could do this at one of the January meeting if you prefer. We do have some time.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, so our next one, we're going to go into the 500 series policies, and we have General Counsel Amy Moore here and Amy Tollefson, District Principal, and we have our scholars. So Amy T., you want to introduce our scholars this evening?
Yes, we are very excited to be here for the first opportunity to do a policy review with all of our scholars. And so we have Hikma Adam and Christian Varga and Aliyah Jiwa, who's here. Aliyah Jiwa, who's here. And Naomi is unable to be here this evening. She's at work conflict, but she was also a part of our feedback, so her voice still will be present. And they are, I'm going to just quickly take a brief tech break and get our slides up, and then we'll go from there.
And I'll say, just from a process standpoint, so we've met with the students who provided a lot of great input. Here, you as a full board will discuss these policies and then provide direction or what you want to see, what sort of outreach you want, whatever it is, and then we will take these policies plus an additional 4 will be at the March Policy Committee. And then at that time, we'll decide which of them one will come to the board for first reading in April.
All right, well, thank you for having us, Board Chair, or Vice Chair Brooks and board members. We are happy, as I said, to be here sharing the feedback, and this was certainly, I think, a first opportunity that our students became more familiar and aware of what the policies are and how all of you as board members help direct and inform and uphold the policies, as well as giving them an opportunity to just see what are these policies all about. So it was, I think, a great learning opportunity, and we had an opportunity to have a fresh set of eyes or a different perspective. So in general, there were maybe just questions that came up, not necessarily suggestions. Sometimes there were suggestions, or definitely perspectives just from their lived experiences in school. So the feedback will be varied, but we had really valuable conversations and spent about 3 hours looking at policy one December day. So the 5 policies listed on the slides are the 5 that we will be sharing feedback with you today. So some had more feedback than others. But we're just gonna get started. I think Kikma is gonna kick us off with policy and procedure 504. So it may be helpful for you to find in your packet where the policies are, because there might be like a line or two that they might refer, and I tried to pull those out to make it just easy viewing, but certainly ask any questions that you have.
Okay, so as you know, policy and procedure 504 is considered dress and appearance, which helps also area schools avoid destruction to school property, like with excessive clothing, like things that can scratch or damage items in the school. It can also improve health and safety with courses that have different safety requirements and maintain the school expectations, making sure that everything is appropriate and doesn't interfere with learning. When we looked at this policy and procedures, we had a few suggestions for edits on health and safety and also questions concerning face masks. On procedure B3, we thought that the word temporary removed would be better than saying temporary suspended because the language comes off really harsh, and we just think that temporary would be able to fix that. We also thought that there could be different accommodations that would help with, like temporary suspended could be changed because in B3, as it said, may be temporarily suspended from participation in said course, and some different students with different beliefs or abilities can kind of like interfere with that, so having another way to include kids would be better. And for face coverings, we had some concerns following the face coverings and questions how it would fit into these procedures. Would face masks fall into that policy, and would ski masks also be considered as a face mask? This comes up because we are post-COVID and it's not uncommon for kids to be, worried about their sicknesses and for people to wear masks for their safety.
So I don't know if the board is aware, at school sometimes we have scholars with ski masks on. Can one of you guys describe what that is? You know what that is?
A ski mask is, to describe it, it covers your entire face but your eyes.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if everybody.
And that's not allowed, correct?
Yeah.
Correct, okay.
Would you like to keep going through? I mean, we can ask all of our questions at the end, or you certainly can just jump in if you have any questions.
Probably easier as we go.
Yeah, can
Sure.
just a pause in between would be
Yeah.
nice.
Where do you see the mask portion? Or
It
the
wasn't-
language?
Yeah, it wasn't in it, that's why we were considering where it would fit inside.
So adding language to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will say, it was a great question to bring up, like the medical face mask. It's something that I want to talk with our lead nurse about, just from kind of her perspective. I don't know that that qualifies as a student dress or appearance thing, if it's being utilized. And maybe if it's being, I guess I could see the hot new trend is everyone wears medical masks or something, and then it's for appearance versus medical purposes. So it's on my follow-up to do in regards to, would it be helpful to call it out?
Thank you.
You're doing great.
If there's things at the end, please just make notes and we'll head back to where everyone went. So the next one was,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry. For C3, the clothing containing language, slogans, emblems, or I'm just curious, emblems or pictures that promote or depict violence, hate, discrimination, harassment. Is that like kind of up the? I mean, is there something specific there, or is it up to the discretion of like the building administration, or like? I'm just curious.
So I think, I want to go back and verify, but I believe we have more specific language in the student handbook that speaks, and so policy might be a little bit more broad, and then we hone in on a little bit more
I
specific.
mean, obviously, as a parent, I know. I'm just kidding. I don't at all. I read every student handbook.
Back and forth.
You're just quizzing them.
Yeah, I'm quizzing you guys.
Right, there are examples, but
Yeah.
to your point,
Yeah.
there might be some things that come up where there are questions of whether it's a First Amendment right, or, and so that's where people will reach out to Amy or myself, and
Okay.
we kind of start that discussion.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
So now we're going to talk about policy procedures 541, which is clinical use and abuse. So we have like a few things that we wanted to talk about with this one, which are application, support, and then education and reintervention. So we'll start with the application of the policy. First, we were wondering if over-the-counter meds fall under like chemical use and abuse, like if people bring over-the-counter meds to school, ibuprofen or Tylenol or something. And then it says in the policy, I believe under enforcement that police referrals could occur, and we were just wondering how and when that would occur. And then we also thought it would be helpful to review the referral process to the student assistance team, which is number 4 in the procedures.
So, I'm sorry, could you stop 1 second so I can write down the notes? So you said police referrals, the how and like what does that look like?
Yeah.
Is that the question? Okay. Thank you. Sorry to
No,
interrupt.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, you're good.
And then number 4, for the procedures, the pre-assessment team or the student assistant team services. So we just think that it would be helpful for someone to review that because it was a bit confusing. Especially letter F, which is on the next slide. I can read it if that would be helpful. Okay. It says, if this team decides not to provide a student, and in the case of a minor, the student's parents with information about school or community services in connection with chemical abuse, records created or maintained by the team about the student must be destroyed not later than 6 months after the determination is made. If the team decides to provide a student, and in the case of a minor, the student's parents with information about school or community services in connection with chemical abuse, records created or maintained by the team about the student must be destroyed not later than 6 months after the student is no longer enrolled in the district. So, can anyone tell me what I just said? Because I can't. It's just really confusing language. So we think that to make it easier to understand and for students and just like people in general to read, the language could be made less confusing. Like, not later than 6 months, could just put 5-6 months, or like, I don't know, something.
End of the school year.
Yeah. So yeah, and then that was for that, and then moving on to support. So there was a lot in this this policy and procedure about like punishing students or the consequences for if they were caught with like abusing or using chemicals or like drugs or whatever, and we think it's important to provide support first instead of punishing addiction, or at least like provide it before they're punished, because like addiction is not something that can be fixed or changed with like consequences. It's something that can be fixed or changed with the proper help and support. So we were just thinking that would be a first step to help the students before they have to like
face the consequences. And then to help enforce that and make sure students are educated about it. We were talking about prevention, education, early intervention. So emphasizing the education of the chemical use and abuse and what different things can do to you and how it's bad for you. And we said we could even educate younger grades, 6th through 8th. I know DARE is a really good program that goes to schools, so keep that, we can keep doing that. And it can also, this type of education can start in the younger grades and also continue in high school, because that's when a lot of kids get into things like that. So just focusing more on the education and support instead of the punishment and consequences.
Do you know, because DARE is through 5th grade, right? Do you know, is anyone in middle school, is there a program like DARE, or it ends at 5th grade, they
Do
graduate?
they do it in health?
I don't know.
They probably cover parts of
Like
some of the
They talk
health
about it,
curriculum.
but they don't.
But it's not like
in
a
way where it's
program or an ongoing.
Understand how to handle it?
Yeah,
Or
it's
with the
more
negative
like-
consequences?
Yeah, it's more like discipline due to your body.
So what would you recommend instead?
More more information, more education about it, and regarding addiction, or I know it's kind of a taboo topic sometimes, but people have parents who deal with that as well.
Mhm.
So just more information about that, I feel, would be helpful, so that students will hopefully not decide to do it, but if they do, they at least know that consequences won't happen.
So talking about consequences, but also adding in here's resources if you
Yeah.
or somebody you know struggle with addiction?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be really helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
You did a good job.
For
We did a really good job.
okay, so a couple questions. 4F. Can someone summarize what that means? I know you read it, but
I have no idea what it means. I have no idea. That's why I was confused.
So here's what I will say, right? A common theme was readability, understand, so that is something that, I will try to be focusing on as we move these forward. Really what that's trying to get at is, you have these student assistance teams that are seeing some students struggle, and they might bring a student up thinking, well, we're not sure, we have this we're seeing these things, do we think it might be chemical addiction related? So if they decide that it's not, we want to make sure that those don't become permanent student records, right? Or if they see that they do want to provide some referrals, there will come a time when the student has gone through it or it ends. And it's kind of to your point about this being an addiction, trying to really support and educate, doesn't need to become a part of a permanent file for the student.
Right.
So really that's what it's trying to get at is then let's just delete these records when they're no longer needed. Right? I think there's a better way to say it. And I'll-
Plain
I'll
language,
work
yeah.
on that.
Is there something about the 6 months, or you were not necessarily, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's,
End of, like you
that's
said,
where it
maybe end of
was.
the school year or
Yeah.
something like that, okay.
Yeah, I think it's well, I don't know, maybe 6 months is long enough. If it happens again, it'll happen in that time. Something like that might have been the thought versus, let's find a way to make it more understandable and more accessible. I will just let you know, we are talking about student medication policy.
Yes.
So it does not apply to Tylenol, by the way.
That was your question.
But it's a really good question.
Yes.
We had that big discussion about it.
I mean, to that point though, is there a reason why we couldn't clarify in the policy that over-the-counter medication or whatever the category is doesn't apply? I appreciated the comments about emphasizing education, especially after 5th grade. I know that it significantly drops off past that point. One of the questions that I had for staff is for the provision of support services for students, how are drug and alcohol abuse counselors related to sort of that section or any sort of a plan for our students?
So, the high schools and the partner with our middle schools have a person assigned to the school, and if there is a student that is using, then they would be referred to that individual for, various degrees of follow-up, and depending on how willing the student is to engage also, they have access to different resources, and depending on the intensity of usage. So, really anytime that a staff identifies a student who is using on school campus or not, but they become aware that they've been using, and maybe their attendance has been struggling, and they boil it down to learning about use or addiction, they will refer to that individual.
So is that something that we should add to the procedures
So
as
I
a
think
step?
that's part of, yes, part of what we were talking about, or what they identified in that for the all votes A through F, kind of includes revisiting. I mean, I would be curious to talk with our site teams on really what is your practice currently, and then how could that reflect what's outlined in the procedure. I think there's some of these things that accurately apply, but it's probably evolved. So how do you accurately reflect that?
Right, and call out that particular position.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
in there anyway.
Yeah.
And can I just ask a question on the proactive kind of education, since we have you 3 students here? What is your, can you explain to us what you think of how open, receptive, like your classmates or, those grades 6th to 8th grade, are students pretty willing to, because I think the DARE programs, students seem pretty engaged and it's like they're on board with that. But do you also feel like students would be fairly open to that education to kind of be like others focused, even if it's not something they struggle with? Like what, I just would love to hear from the 3 of you if you have any thoughts on that. Because I love that you're suggesting that and just, hearing kind of the reality of.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope they would be like I would have been. But then, like, even if they're not like super open or receptive, even just hearing that, like hearing that or having to do like maybe like a small activity or worksheet, like about it, even that just puts that thought in their brain. So at least they're they think about it, and then maybe later, like if something comes up, like they'll remember that, be like, oh, I should not do this, So like even if they're not super receptive at the time, it can still help to, if they have the knowledge and information.
Yeah, that's good.
To add on to that, I know at my school, Osceola High School, students opened up like a stop vaping or vaping awareness, and there's like posters all over our hallways. So I feel like once we started that, we're like kind of requesting more information. I feel like they would be interested.
That's good.
To trail on what they said, there's a lot of things that go into this, but one of the most important things is early prevention and planting seeds in people's minds for them to learn that these things are harmful, because if a kid didn't learn that drugs were bad or didn't get enough education, what's going to happen is they'll probably go into that, and then they have another set of problems on top of that. So planting seeds in people's minds and just information will help them no matter if they're interested. That's one of the big battles that we need to focus on.
Yeah, wow, I love that, thank you.
All right. Policy 520, student surveys.
Talking about student surveys on the first bullet point, we're talking about how there needs to be more accessible options to opt out of the student survey. Currently, I think we reviewed that it's just an email, but that it can get very, very quickly and easily with spam or other things, and that we need to include more modern ways to have the chance to opt out, like a text message or a phone call or whatever that looks like now. And for the second bullet point, including a mission will provide parents and guardians with more info with what they're really doing and what they're signing up for and what they're engaging a student in. And this also brings clarity to what the survey is, why it helps the district, and it could even help more families to opt in now that they know what it's about.
I thought it was interesting during our conversation, they're doing work right now on revising the student survey, and as we were talking about this policy, they're like, well, how do you even use this information? And what is this, for? And so that, even though we've spent time talking about the survey, talking about revising it, even with this group who's very closely connected, they still are wondering how this information is used. And then as Amy and I shared how schools use it and how you all use it to inform the experience, they're like, well, that makes a lot of sense. How can we make everybody else be aware of that too? So I think we had good conversations around just the purpose.
And it would probably, maybe if people knew the purpose more, like, participate. We'd have like a broader participation meeting.
And it builds trust
Yeah.
and emphasizes transparency.
So I think I'm a little confused with the opt-out part of it. Is this not an optional survey already? The student survey? Or are we saying that it's not presented as optional?
I would think that it's an optional survey.
I think it's optional, but I don't know how many people know it's optional.
Like, does it say it's optional in the?
I'm not sure.
Says they'll not impose academic or other penalty if you opt out.
Let me see.
Which sounds wrong, actually.
Yeah.
Can you repeat that again, Kate?
Says the school district will not impose an academic or other penalty upon a student who opts out of participating in the survey, which doesn't really feel like it's
Heartwarming or
an
welcoming or
option.
anything
Yeah,
like
that's,
that.
I'm just confused. The opt-out
Well,
seems
passive
almost,
also.
I'm confused how that relates when it's already an optional survey.
Need to change that wording.
Yeah,
Well, just like making people aware that it's optional, I think. Because, like, again, not many students really know much about this survey. We don't know what it's used for, what the purpose is. Like, all we know is that we're told in foundations or advisory to take a survey every year. So I think just more transparency about, like, you can opt out and, like, what it's used for and stuff like that would be helpful because there's not, like, we don't know much information about it.
And knowing that there's a purpose behind it, students will more than likely give better information or more detailed information knowing that it can be used for something good.
So I think the opt-out thing was like, yes, it's already optional, but people aren't aware that it's optional, I think.
can we, so for policy committee, are you able to gather the language that we're using for the survey to communicate that it's optional and anonymous and?
Yeah, and it says here on 2, if you're pulling up info, like what does it look like for us? That parents will be notified about the survey at the beginning of each school year. Is that done in our forms we fill out? Is that done, how is that
I
communicated?
will get all that information.
Lots of fun homework, Amy.
At one point, I thought it was a letter that was sent out, but I'm not sure if that's since changed.
Okay.
The communication.
That
Yeah, I
sounds
think it might be,
familiar.
I'm just looking at some old files, like, it looks to me like they've been emailed out, and they're going to the parents, so like, I've been able to see as a student.
I saw the student survey.
Do you get notified, like the week before you take the test, do you guys ever get an
Oh,
email
we're-
like this is coming up?
No.
Okay.
We have our own.
Which if you're old enough,
Right.
that might be helpful, yeah.
Right.
That's a good point.
And that's why I mentioned like a more modern way to communicate it if possible because email is kind of like mail.
It just disappeared, yeah.
Do students check their phone?
They did say that.
Silence.
You don't have to
There was
answer.
silence.
Maybe.
I don't know, I'm older, you know, I don't know what kids do. So texting is texting?
Yeah.
Okay, or am I even old if I say
More modern
Safe
than
space,
email.
Erica.
Get a Snapchat account, okay.
So this is like different from the Minnesota student
Correct.
survey, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get more information about the survey in general in policy committee? I just feel like there's a lot of
Yep.
unanswered questions that shouldn't be this hard.
You could probably have Dr. Bass be part of that next policy meeting.
Well, and it hasn't been reviewed since 18, so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah,
It could be
maybe.
really outdated. A lot of changes.
So on page 6 of 11, procedure 506 on I think B8, early intervention. I remember thinking of the wrong one, I'm sorry. Okay, page 1 or 2 on policy 520.
Yeah.
It talks about how and why the student could opt out, but we reviewed that it's just way too confusing. I could read through it, but I don't want to put any of you guys to sleep. So if you want to read it, it's on page 1.
Under C.
Yeah, under C.
Very statutory-based language, and again, a readability issue.
Well, and sometimes is it required or good for us to have some of that really legal ease?
Sometimes, but the challenge is I think we can make it more understandable,
Okay.
hopefully. Yes.
Also, if you needed to have like the legal like words in it, maybe it could be like in some of them it says like referred to like this from somewhere else. Like you could put more of those in there just so that it's like easy to read and understand.
It's just a challenge to understand.
But that's the U.S. Department of Education
Yeah.
survey, though. It's a different one, right?
Yeah, it is.
That's not even the Minnesota survey, right? Or is this the Minnesota one?
How many surveys are we giving our kids? I'm just curious.
Up to us is our District 1 and the Minnesota one.
Yeah, this is our district one, and then and then we have the Minnesota one.
It's our district one, but then they throw in this language,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's also maybe a question for like the policy committee to struggle with more of like, do you want to just make this about the district survey? Because like this language about, the U.S. Department, that's already law, right? Don't know that it needs to be thrown in there.
Yeah.
We have some work to do.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to meet in February. No.
Okay, so moving on to policy and procedures 514, bullying and hazing prohibition. So with this one, unfortunately bullying is like still a big thing that happens in all schools. And a lot of times like people may not know like how or when to report it or what like classified as bullying, and like this, it does like state what it is in here, but we were just thinking it might be helpful to develop a student-friendly summary, because like most students would not want to read like all of the pages of this policy, or like, and they might not be able to like pick out the parts that they need to like, understand if something should be reported or not. So just like a summary for students would be helpful. And then a distinction between like bystanders and instigators. I'm not sure where it says it. It says it somewhere in here, but just like to help distinguish between those words, and again help like students understand it better. And then we also think that there should be a follow-up with the people who are bullied, and even who like did the bullying, with like emotional and academic support based on their needs and what they need, because like stopping the bullying and like punishing who does it or giving them consequences like is good, and it needs it needs to happen, and the follow-up is just as important, because we don't want to like lose any kids or like make them feel bad or worse or feel like they're not supported. So I think just something else about the follow-up with support would be better.
Adding to Alia's point, I think follow-up is one of the most important things, because a lot of kids, even though they're bullied, are susceptible to not want to reach out because they might be afraid. So if they do make that step, which they should, then they should be given more support by feedback, because it'll build trust with them and the system.
Is this support for the victim, or support both ways, or?
It can be both ways.
I think both ways.
I think the victim support is really huge that you guys brought that up, and I appreciate that insight. Do you have any idea where that language is about?
Yeah, we were referencing 2H there. The policy applies not only to persons who engage in the act of bullying, but also who their indirect behavior condone or support another's act of bullying or hazing. And so the concern was, well, if I'm walking by, right? So it was it was bystanders, it was people who happenstance versus like, if a group of students are there, and there's a bunch of people felt that type, that like distinguishing kind of the different roles that could be played.
Have you all ever had any restorative work at your schools, or you know what restorative justice restorative work is? When an incident has happened, it could be bullying, hazing, or whatever, but it's a way for the victim. They have to both agree to it to get closure. Someone comes in and do restorative. No, you have not had that. So that's something we can work on. Yeah. I know Osceola Middle School does quite a bit of it. So.
So Christian, like if you and I got in an argument or something, and I felt like you were attacking me, and we agreed to have Amy maybe meet with us, and we would kind of walk through it and see if there was a way for us to restore our friendship or to build it back. So that's what Dr. Howell means about like restoring something that's maybe been damaged. Of course, that would assume something existed in the first place in that
Right.
example,
Right.
because for some it's not. I was curious too, when you're talking about bullying or hazing at school, I like this distinction between bystander and instigator, but do you ever have conversations, to Amy's point, like when a bystander, you move from a bystander to an instigator role,
Or
right? Because like
participant.
you might have just walked by, but now all of a sudden you join in on what's going on. Now you're an instigator. Well, that's what I think. I don't know if that's the definition, but is that what you were trying to get between on definitions, or?
Yeah, I think so, and just like of course both are bad, and like the difference between them, and like the different consequences based on if you're a bystander or an instigator.
Sure.
And like a lot of people say bystanders is just as bad, and it's also really hard to speak up when there's like a bully, and I'm not excusing it by any means. I just don't think that the punishment or consequences should be the same for someone who's actively doing the bullying and someone else who like happens to walk by or sees it.
And that might be another good one from the Amy's to get like real life application, what that looks like. Even just a couple examples from our schools of varying levels of consequences. And that might answer a question, right? Because that is a good question, and yeah, good delineation.
Thank you.
I think that when we were looking at it, it was either you're the one being harmed, or you might be the one doing the bullying, but it didn't necessarily talk about the roles. And so how do we think about the learning and the impact of those that might be somewhere in between?
Well, it sounds like we are missing like bystander participant, people that aren't actively involved but passively involved.
Well, sometimes it may be a fight, right, or it could be something else, but there's a bunch of people there, and then you have administration trying to move in, administration's asking people to move and they're not moving. Is that an innocent bystander, or now they're in the way?
Well, that's what we were wondering. Like,
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Good question.
you all didn't know what hazing was? Did you know what hazing was?
Hazing was unfamiliar.
Okay.
Did you know
To
about
the
it
group.
before this? Did you know what hazing was before?
I don't know what it was. It's like what they do at sororities.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of curious of.
Yeah.
Just,
So you think it's a term we should keep in here that people will understand it? I mean, our age, we understand it.
Is hazing just like,
I mean, it does say the definition here, so that's
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
Okay.
And it's technically getting to statute, is you're supposed to have a policy that does address hazing.
Oh, okay,
So-
okay.
We still have
Okay.
sports teams, and
Yeah.
we might not have fraternities and sororities,
Yeah.
but
I mean, there has been stuff in the news
Yeah.
about,
Yeah.
you know, about.
If we made like a student-friendly like summary, it could say like just what hazing is instead of using the word, because that's not like the legal stuff. It's just for students to like understand.
what would you all call it?
Hazing.
Hazing. Now that you know.
like hazing with what it means, and then some examples, I mean, I didn't know what hazing was until I read this, so.
What would you call it in your like current language? Like how the words that you have in your toolbox.
Peer pressure?
Peer pressure.
Embarrassment ritual.
Rituals.
Okay, girl.
Traditions.
Good definition.
Okay, I like that one.
You want to go first?
I don't care. Okay. I was just curious about the cyberbullying piece, and you just mentioned Amy has to be in here, but what about like social media, kind of the rules of engagement? Like, because I feel like it seems that a lot of the things that happen in our buildings are a result of maybe something on a social, or that in itself can be bullying if somebody's posting something about somebody, and so I just didn't know do we have that somewhere else, or like in a technology type policy, or like I do think that's an important component, just because it's so prevalent.
Yeah, and it did come out in our discussion that most of the bullying is
Yes.
online. So in the procedure, it does talk about cyberbullying.
Right.
And, maybe there does need to be more of a flushing out in this, given that its prevalence is kind of more front and center than
Hazing.
what you would see.
Mm-hmm. But it just seems like cyberbullying is more like specific to like actual the messages, or I don't know, like I do think there's some distinction between like
It starts here.
Yeah.
Or
I don't know. I mean, I think it's something to look at. Like, I think the policy committee could look at that. Like, I'm just curious. I mean, that's social media is new. I mean, I don't know. Like, you had just mentioned that, because of state statute, we have to have certain things in here. And sometimes it lags on, that state statute kind of lags on actually what's happening in our real life. And I think social media, unless maybe it's even called social media, I don't know. Like, it just seems like social media is such a prevalent, I mean, I know in my own kid's life, it's huge, in terms of like what people are seeing and how they're feeling, and if they're ready to go to school because they saw something on social, and it may not be like this person's name specific. I don't know, I think there's something to that.
And we will have things that start on social media, like we'll see it like over winter break, something like there's all this social media going back and forth.
And it comes into the school.
And then there's a fight, right? And so like that will come out in investigation and will have an impact on maybe how it ends up getting addressed, to your point on that.
So Amy, like in a procedures 1B, we have definition of cyberbullying. Do we want?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying, Ms. Kelsey?
Yeah.
Put something in the policy.
Yeah, I guess I'm more curious of like, I don't have an answer. I just was wondering if there's like there's something to that, if there is like a difference, and I don't know.
No, yeah, I think that's a good point, because a lot of stuff is on social media, like, on Snapchat even, like, you can like put in your school, and then each school has like a school story, and anyone can post on that if they have the school added. So like, there have been times where like I clicked on it and it's been something either like really inappropriate, or like things like that are like probably considered bullying. Like a month ago, someone posted another student's address on the school story, which like it was recorded and stuff, but like that's something that's absolutely not okay. So just like, I think adding into that, like posting on stories, even if it's not like a direct message like you were saying, is still considered bullying.
Yeah, it's like that digital citizenship, like how do you...
So your question is our language in the policy enough to cover cyberbullying?
Yeah.
Social, like anything.
Or social media.
Yeah.
Oh,
or like,
so
I know that there's
including
pages that like do things like at the middle school, I know there's like Instagram accounts that like, I can't remember what they call it, but they like sync people up and they're like...
Shipping?
Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know, like I would be like mortified if like I was like on that, so I don't know, like maybe that's not like a big
They're
deal, but I'm
laughing
like,
at
like, because sometimes, no, I'm serious, I've seen kids, like sometimes they put kids together that like people make fun of it, or like it's like people like laugh, like haha, that, I think that's like...
Or
this also
hijacking an individual's likeness. I mean, that's something I think has been exploding.
Yeah.
Right?
And it gets to education, right? How to be a good digital citizen.
Yeah.
For lack of a
that
better
digital
word.
citizen.
There's like lots of different kind of areas, and what can we maybe call out here under bullying versus like in our discipline policy, we talk about misuse of technology or misuse of social media.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, and like real quick to Erica's point about like bystanders, I also think like when there are fights, like I know even my own kids will come home and be like, oh my gosh, I got this video, and I'm like, don't you share that with anybody, don't you dare, but I mean, not everybody knows, so like, You know, people just think they just send things and.
Yeah, and I even more just think, like for cyberbullying especially, there's instances where kids will see it and it's hard because you guys are in a tough spot with social media. Like it's not an easy time you live in. But there's points where it's like, okay, that is the gray area where you probably should have done something or, you know, reported it or something like that. It's like, how do we suss out what that gray area is, you know? And it is gray because there's no clear line, I don't think. So, sorry guys.
It's kind of hard though for us to draw that line when I think we didn't get any education. I think we're probably the worst at the. So, yeah. You know some of the groups.
Yeah.
So the question I had was on 2F and G, which speaks to like the employee's role So the employee's role, and so I think I am wondering if the language is strong enough and what our policies are around staff needing to document when bullying is happening. Given that we have like the Stop It platform and all of that where we're trying to like collect this data, doesn't seem very clear what that role or mandate would be for staff.
Yeah, like it says like a reasonable person. Like how do you define a reasonable person? You know,
especially these days, right?
Legal term of art versus.
So like reasonable efforts to help a student. Like what are reasonable efforts?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
in my head, it's like to help a student above and beyond as much as you can do. But maybe reasonable efforts, like I don't know, could be just like doing a little bit, and then if it doesn't work, it's like okay, whatever, you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree that reasonable efforts isn't strong enough, Thomas. I think it needs to be.
Like add everything they can, or like.
Well, and maybe that goes into procedures where we delineate what that looks like, what a reasonable effort is in terms of bullying. Because I agree.
So I think our practice has shifted significantly this year to reflect that, and we have had very, very clear guidance and expectations on how we should be documenting bullying, harassment, and discrimination. Those three. And so I've been working with sites tremendously around this is how we document when there's been a student-to-student incident, whether it's reported and it's substantiated or whether it's reported and not substantiated, so that we can hold on to all the information that we have and how we supported both the person that's reporting being harmed and the person who has done the harm. So we have very clear documentation. So it's still a work in progress, but we have a system in place. There's been a lot of guidance for our site leaders.
So we just need to kind of capture the work you've done.
Yes, so I think this can maybe just catch up to the current practice.
Good timing to have
Yes.
it reflect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that it's mandated that they have to document.
Yes.
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 It is.
Not only at their level, but we have,
Yeah.
we have, we're going out as a team as well with myself and a team, and we're meeting with every administration team and going step by step of expectations. So we'll be doing that across all sites and all departments as well, so just let you know.
I also think what happens is, oh sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, so anything that a student reports has to be documented?
Yes.
Or?
What do you
meets
mean,
these
like-
definitions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
So like bullying, we want to know. I want to know that it happened, but more importantly, I want to know that it was addressed.
Yeah, okay.
And so if they're not documenting and they're just handling it themselves, like that doesn't help us identify trends and
it doesn't help
to understand the
teacher.
So
And then also like addressing it properly, because like if like a teacher administrator addresses it and like one of the students like doesn't feel like it's been addressed or the problem has been solved, but the administrator does, that's still not fully addressing it.
Yeah.
So I think just like making sure, checking in with the student that they actually feel okay and like that like with how everything was resolved. Because I know there have been times where like an issue has occurred and the administrator or teacher was like, yeah, I addressed it, it's fine, but the student still had like pent up feelings about it. So just to really check in with the students.
So allowing the student able to process, because sometimes we wouldn't be able to tell you what happened to the other student.
Yeah.
But holding space with that other student for them to be able to share their impact.
And like even if you can't tell them like what happened, like if someone bullied them and you can't say what happened with them, just like telling them that they're heard and that like the problem has been like addressed. Like you don't have to go into specifics, but it's hard to speak out, like to speak up, and then not getting much response back makes it even worse. So just like really like focusing on that follow up, I think.
That's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that goes in when we talk about the summary that we can provide to students. It can have that piece in there, as well as like who are their options of people they can talk to.
And even for parents and students,
Yes.
having that like tree of communication of like, here's how you escalate something. Because I think that's a big thing with a lot of families I talk to, they don't know where to take it. And that's where it feels kind of like, oh, it's a big machine, how do you start?
That's kind of along those lines. Like, I think the two areas that I hear a lot around kind of bullying or kids feeling bad are like there's these like big text chains that are going on, especially like 5th, 6th, 7th, where there'll be like 100 kids on this like on a text. It's like crazy, and it is bullying. It's like taking like little jabs, and people like leave the group, come back. I mean, even at one of my kids' school, I mean, the administration let the parents know in a particular grade, like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how you talk to. And it was really helpful, And then also, I think the other big thing that, kind of to your point of like, is, John, I'm looking at you, like the transportation, like people get it, I think, conflated too, like, something happens on a bus, like, and they get like all riled up, and then it's like, where do you go? Like, who do you, and it doesn't, I think people don't like, oh, you have to talk to the bus, it's people like, no, I want to talk to the principal about it right now, and like, I don't know, so I think I do think there's, with this, it's like, it's an opportunity. I know it's like not necessarily the policy, but like to even provide some education, like kind of for families of like what to do, what to watch for. I even think like some of the social media stuff like Snapchat, like I have no idea, like, what to even look for, to support like my school, to say like, no, you can't do that. I don't know.
And I appreciate what you shared too about the follow-up, because like you said, if you feel like as a student, does it make a difference if I share anything? So thank you for that insight. That's really good.
Making our very last policy that we reviewed around student discipline. This might have been the last one that we reviewed in our 3-hour engagement. It's still one of the longest ones.
Okay. Starting on student discipline, overall the policy was strong and clear. Like, we're just remembering and reading back, we didn't really have any problems with it. Even it was pretty clear and we felt pretty happy about it. I don't think it really needs any change right now. I mean, if you look at it and you think it does, then you could say that, but I think it looks pretty okay compared to the other ones. And then we saw positive like support for early prevention. So reviewing these, we noticed like a detailed step-by-step procedure, and it looks like it covers a lot of the bases more than I even thought that we had. But with that being said, I don't know how effective or if it's really followed through. Like we talked about the bullying and hazing, where the teacher would have to go to lengths to like. You were saying something about how they have to do the best they can. Yeah. So I don't know if it's followed suit or if it's actually being followed through as effectively. So that's something I want to know more about. And beyond the consequences of things, on page 6 of 11, procedure 506, on D8, provides all the steps of early intervention that you can look at. And that goes back to the second page of the procedure. But I mainly want to know if it's really followed through and if it's really effective. I don't have any experience with that, but I'd like to.
And also, and adding on to that, also what support like exists following like the incident where the student was disciplined, because like of course like people do like things that are wrong and they have to face the consequences, and like it's always like I think it would be very beneficial to continue to support the students who do things that may not be the best, you know, because like they're still students and they still deserve the support from the staff around them. So just adding that to the discipline part, or like just keeping that in mind, I guess. Because like both can exist at the same time. Like discipline and support can exist at the same time, and I think that they should. And I think more emphasis should be put on the support for this and for like the bullying and hazing and the other ones that we talked about.
Yeah, during our session, I think you said it really well in saying, oh, this is short term, right? This is kind of the immediate response. And so how can we communicate long term that support and those interventions?
One of the sessions that Amy led was with some of our principals, and I feel like it's the meat to the bones of what our policy is, because it's the short term with the long term. So you're looking at a policy that probably is not the hard portion of it, but what the principals talked about was really the heart motivation behind how they discipline and the supports. So I agree, like it'd be good to add in that there are supports given and like what those are, but there are supports, which is I think really encouraging. And I appreciate you guys' heart for the student in person beyond just what's on paper. So thank you.
In my opinion, like I were to do something bad or misbehave in like 4th grade or whatever, I never got anything from a teacher yelling at me or fully disciplining me. There have been times where something like that would happen, and then the teacher would be supportive or just be really nice, and then that would allow me to actually change my behavior. I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but I think they both need each other, and right now I think we need more support for our students.
Yeah, I think a lot of people's first reaction when a student misbehaves is, what are the consequences? How are we going to discipline them? How are we going to punish them? When it would be nice if the first question was, why are they acting this way? Like, what is causing this? Because then that could help get to the root of the problem and like actually change it. Because of course, like when someone's yelling at you or getting mad at you, it just makes you not want to listen. So I think just asking why to all students when like if they happen to misbehave will be beneficial.
Yeah, there's a negative attention. Yeah, that negative attention is still attention, right? But they might be needing and craving things. Yeah.
And I'd like to ask, has it changed in the past 10 years of like have you moved towards more support?
My understanding
Yeah.
is yes,
Yes.
greatly, yeah. It was a really cool presentation, and they illustrated a lot of like the psychology behind behavior versus just the behavior, and like you're looking at the fruit of something versus the roots, and so addressing the roots. Did I capture it, Amy? You're the expert.
Behavior is a form of communication.
Yes. So we had opportunity for discussion along the way, so I think you all had your opportunity. And I would just also be very open to your feedback to Dr. Kyle around the process. So this was our first attempt at engaging with policy. So if this is something we continue to do in the future and you'd like to see other suggestions, very open to your feedback also. So thank you.
And a question for you guys when you're reviewing this, Amy, would be just asking them individually, because you probably don't want to answer in front of us all, if this was like a helpful or like a good process for you to go through, and if they want, like if this is something they feel that's value.
Because we have standards-based grading coming up, so.
What's that?
We're just laughing because we all kind of want to know too.
Yeah, Zach, it's true, it's true.
This was really helpful though for
Yeah.
me. Like
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate the time you took. That's a lot of time out of your
Yeah,
day.
you guys have a lot of wisdom. in
Yes.
this.
Thank you.
And waiting.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Drive home safely.
Yes.
Are you going to have school tomorrow?
Yes, I'm sorry. Not for you three. You're excused. Yeah.
Superintendent. It's on the recording.
Unfortunately, I just got something. The plows will be out between 2 and 4 a.m.
Yep.
So yeah, we're going.
It's recorded. You already got it.
I'm sorry.
Use your resources. It's right there.
Yeah, right. Use your phone.
Right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Figure it out by being
Yeah.
clear.
actually felt guilty there for a while.
The board director, I heard a lot regarding the bullying and hazing. So, like with the cell phone policy, right? We did, worked with Kay in sending out kind of like notification through family communications of, hey, we're looking at this policy, would love your feedback. Are there certain ones that you'd like to see that more extensive outreach on? Bullying, hazing?
Yeah, well, it'd be great to tie it into our community conversations. I think these are really easy
sure.
on-ramps again to just,
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
they're natural stopping
Yeah.
points for us. That'd be huge. But, communication would be good.
But, but not everybody goes to that, so I think that, I love that idea, and I think it would be
Both.
Yeah.
good to.
Both? Are there, do you want all of them, just that one?
Just that.
Yeah.
Especially that one.
I think it's good to focus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that one comes up a lot.
And that overlaps with safety things. so I think
Absolutely.
that-
Mental health,
Yep.
safety, like,
Thank you.
Oh, Amy, I had one quick observation. So there seemed to be like a cool, I know this was about the board policies, right? But there seemed to be a lot of how do you translate this to like a student handbook kind of thing. So I don't know if there's I'm not trying to give work to people, but I don't know if there's a way to review kind of how this translates to the student handbook, because they were asking a lot of questions like, well, what does that really mean? Are you guys, what does this mean in your language, or what does this mean? And I know we do that on some level, but I think a lot of what
We
they
do. I will
gathered
say,
helped
like with the
them.
bullying and hazing, right now they are just posting the policy and procedure. There are others where there's summaries, so I've got a pile on my desk over there about
yeah.
like kind of required notices and student handbook, and so it's a good opportunity as we're going through these, so that is something that we're working on. Like readability, understandability, access is what we are looking at. For that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Alrighty, so we'll go on to our next one under enrollment, and we have John Morstad and the one and only BJ Ermiter, Coordinator of K-12 Operations. I don't know if you're gonna out-impress the kids of what they just did, but.
I would never attempt.
Yeah, we'll give her a roll.
I'll
So.
always be the star.
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead, gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Heil. Tonight is the presentation about enrollment trends and projections that are reviewed annually to project enrollment for the next fiscal year and for subsequent years. These projections are the foundations of planning for the staffing needs for the upcoming school year. And projections for next year include, that we're going to show you today actually include the major changes that came out of boundary changes and the addition of the new elementary school. Our agenda for the day, we're going to work first through some enrollment history. As we look at it, our history is primarily focused on the current year. The current year is considered part of history for us now as we book it, because once we get past October 1, the state considers that our number locked in for the year. We actually use November 1st as our measure, just because we have a little bit of volatility still in October. So from a budgeting standpoint, we like to use November, but those are the numbers. When the state is metering out money to us, they use what your enrollment was on October 1st. So we'll talk about that. Residents enrolled elsewhere, both public and private, kindergarten enrollment, our preliminary enrollment projections for next year, and then a brief discussion on some class size information. So all the data that we're going to look at tonight is based on our November 1st enrollment counts. We are also, we kind of shifted. In the previous years, we had looked at just K through 12. And with change with boundaries and us modifying that, we decided to switch. And so we historically went back and added back in and switched to pre-K. So what we're adding in is all VPK through 12. So that's the number we're going to present to you today. Overall district enrollment for fiscal 26. Oops, sorry, I got to switch my notes. We actually exceeded last year's enrollment by 359 students, or about 1.7%. Our pre-K through 12 enrollment of 21,009 students is 192 students less than we projected last fall, or It is important to note that last fall's projections, when we made them, the final decision on the 279 online elementary program hadn't been made, so we projected like it still existed. And so that is about 74 additional students that we would take off. So if you back that away, we missed our projection by about 118 students, or 0.56%. So our goal is to always be within 1% plus or minus of our projections. Just trying to be as consistent as we possibly can so that the DLTL team and DJ and his team can accurately staff so we have the people in the right places for the next school year. I see my slide didn't pick up a few of the numbers on here. I apologize about that. So here's another way to look at this, that same information, but you're kind of seeing it in the red secondary and blue elementary lines for what our enrollment history has been. So you can see that we did take an uptick in secondary this year and a very slight decrease in elementary. Typically, thorough analysis of our 5-year historical trend is a key component in projecting future enrollment. That is really difficult to do when you're changing boundaries at all elementary and all middle school. So while we utilized all of the kind of cohort data as kids move from grade to grade to grade, we still use those percentages, but had to change all the numbers they were multiplying to because we were looking at a different picture for each school. So this is probably, when it comes to an enrollment projection, probably the least comfortable I've ever been putting numbers in front of somebody because there's so many factors that are a bit out of our control. I spent a lot of time on it to try to make sure that we had this as pinpointed as possible to, again, try to be respectful because those decisions are important. This is the primary driver of our revenue and our budget and then therefore our staffing. So here's a breakdown of enrollment by type. So what you're seeing on the chart here is the blue section are our current residents that are enrolled. Red is open enroll students coming in, and green, the little sliver, is tuition. So we either have students who tuition and come into us on a tuition agreement of some sort, just much like we have others that we send out to say 287 on a tuition agreement. We have some that come to us.
Can I just ask, like, who? Like,
Yep.
can you give me an example of like? What would
Of a tuition
yeah.
in?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember how to describe it. A lot of times I think it's open enrollment, but it tags into, it's typically driven through special ed.
Yeah. Okay.
So it ties to that program. So that's where some will say, hey, I really like the programs that you offer at this particular school, so I'm going to open enroll in. So it is open enrollment, but it's not at the same time. So it's a little bit.
Thanks.
Minnesota has open enrollment options, and obviously families can choose to enroll in their students in public schools that are not the school district where they reside. We typically have a range between 1,300 and 1,700 students. This year, our number is 1,722, which is a 13 student increase over last year. The percent went down just a little bit, just based on how all the percentages shift, and I'll get to that. But 8.2% of our total district's enrollment comes from students outside of our district. For us, predominantly, we receive students from Anoka Hennepin, Robbinsdale, Minneapolis, and Brooklyn Center are the biggest ones. We actually lose more students to Anoka Hennepin, Brooklyn Center, and Fridley than we gain, but we gain more from schools like Buffalo, Minneapolis, and Robbinsdale. And that's fairly typical for us over the last few years, that we have that pretty standard trend. With Anoka Hennepin, we lose more students than we receive. Typically, open enrollment numbers do increase over the course of the year, so as we come back around to next year, 1722 number will change. But that's very normal.
John, for Anoka Hennepin, is that primarily at the secondary level, or are we also losing students at the elementary level?
It's still. I think it's definitely more at secondary than
the location of the school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's typically your biggest driver of open enrollment is location. I'm the perfect example of that. I live in the Elk River district. My kids open enrolled to St. Michael Albertville because the schools are closer. Because I live in the city of Albertville and would have to drive to Rogers for school rather than I can see the schools a mile and a half. so it's not that far. All right, so enrollment actual versus projected. I'm still going off the 192 number because that's the number that we projected. So elementary was 111 below, middle school's 20 over, high school's 47 over, and the other programs, which are OEC transition, OALC alternative learning, and the 279 online is 148 under. You can see a list here of the schools where they were over by 10 or more or under by 10 or more. So it's a bit of a mix between the two. And this happens from time to time that there's a number of factors that can come in here. And obviously as we get a little farther into it, you're going to see private school numbers went up a lot. And I think that's where, that's something we really don't have any indication is going to happen. So we tend to have to be reactive to that number.
John, on OEC, are you doing it to the age of 22 then?
Yep.
Or?
Yeah, so about 20 more kids than we've seen in previous years.
Okay. Because they can choose to leave at the age of 21 as well.
Yeah,
so.
and a lot of it just begins, if you're ready, you can
Yeah.
graduate out of the
Yeah.
program too. So, but we typically see OEC starts at a higher number at the beginning of the year, and it just goes down as kids either age out or graduate, which is
Sure.
exactly what we want. We want to graduate.
Right.
But we see that because it's not driven on you need to be here this many years. It's you need to learn these skills,
Yeah.
and once you have them learned, we want to pat you on the back, send you off. So. Okay, so now we'll jump into the residents enrolled elsewhere. So we've broken this into two sections. So let's start with public. Other public options include traditional school districts and charter schools. This year we saw a decrease of 115 students, or about 1.8% less chose to take the public option outside of Osseo area schools. So that's good news. This number has been declining, so slightly, but declining for the last 3 years. So when people are making the option to say, I'm going to keep my kids in public school, we're capturing more and more of those kids slowly but surely. And we actually created our own capture rate for public school students. So of the families who choose public schools, 75.2%, or three out of every 4 of our resident students choose Osseo schools. Fiscal 26, we estimate we're capturing, like I said, every 3 out of 4. Second year of a notable improvement. Last year we went up a little over 0.5%. This is a 0.8% increase. So again, those choosing public are seeing us as their primary option and one of the best options. So we're not necessarily losing them to charters. In the past, we had seen that happen a lot. We're actually pretty consistently seeing the enrollment in those charters, especially our big ones around us, declining, and we're capturing those kids back. So a lot of good information in those pieces. So a little list here of residents. Where do they attend? Most of our other public schools. So this is a list of any school district that has 60 or more of our residents, any public school, so public or charter. The ones with the asterisk are part of the Northwest Suburban Integrated School District, so there's some reason within Magnet that you may choose to go, and that takes you to an Okehennepin or takes you to Fridley or something like that. You're still a student that left our system, but we kind of know why, so it's really still a bit of a partnership. So the first 3 columns as you're going across are the previous years, and then the fiscal 26, you kind of see, we give you a little more detail, so you can see the number of residents we lost to say in Okehennepin at 783, but we gained 502, so we're 281 down, just to an Okehennepin. And you can kind of see the variation there. Obviously, we gained more from Minneapolis and a bit more, 62 more students from, say, Robbinsdale than the others. So when you're looking at charter schools, again, the same 60 kids or more rule we're putting in here. Parnassus is the largest charter school that we lose residents to. This year, we lost 22 less than the previous year. And you kind of look at history there. In 23, they hit their high at 940, and we're at 885 now. So it's a slight trend, but a trend. Nice to see, especially on this one, we want to see red numbers in the far right column. So it's really only Prairie Seeds Academy that had an increase in our students attending from previous years. The rest of them we are gaining back. So we gained back 179 students that versus the previous year, choosing us rather than a charter school. So now we're going to look at the private and homeschool side, and this unfortunately is not as favorable. Osseo Schools residents choosing to attend private or homeschools made up 2,985 students this year. That is an increase of 604 students over the previous year. Private schools increased 485 and homeschool 119. Previously, this number was spread over 59 private schools. We're up to 81 private schools. So 79 charter schools, charter and other publics have kids of ours attending, and 81 private schools. So 160 schools are our competition. That's a big number. I never thought it would be even a quarter of that. So that is a big number. If we look at where the biggest pieces fall into play, Maranatha Christian, we lose 309 students, which is about 5 more than the previous year. St. Vincent down the street, 286, again about 5 more. Heritage Christian is the largest increase. They're at 304 now, up 65. They just opened a new addition onto their building with additional classrooms. So they increased their capacity, had a waiting list all the time, they captured their waiting list. So that's one of the bigger places that we lost. Providence Academy, 208 kids, up 49. So again, that's a pretty big move when you're moving that.
What
many
did you
kids.
say Maranatha's numbers was?
Maranatha is 309, up 5. De La Salle is another big one. 39 kids, up 27 over last year.
Is
Yeah.
St. Vincent Elementary?
It's like K8.
K8.
So the other thing that's always interesting with this is private schools don't have to give us any information. And so a lot of times they won't. We just know the kid is no longer attending public school. We just are told they're in a private school. They won't say where. So we actually categorize other non-public. 254 kids, up 119 over the previous year. So that's the biggest pot. And that's one of those issues sometimes with public-private is the rules are different. Private schools don't have to share any information if they don't want to. There's nothing the state requires them to do to share to the resident districts, even though there are some things within our levies and so on that are tied to who lives in our district, not who attends our district. But so they don't have to provide that information. So it becomes this gray area for us. And that's where it can be really hard for us to know. I mean, we knew Heritage was building on because we could see it driving by. I didn't know quite when it was going to open, apparently now. So like I said, we're a little reactionary to this number after the fact. And this one is also very economically driven. So as the economy grows and gets stronger, we see that number go up. As it gets weaker, it comes down very noticeably. I think since the pandemic, especially on the homeschool side, you've seen more people willing to say, I'm going to keep especially my youngest kids, my kindergartners, I'm going to homeschool them more frequently, just because I think it's their choice, and if they feel they can do it. And so I think there's a bigger willingness for people to try that, at least, and see if it's something they like.
What was the pot of other, what was that total?
254, up 119.
Thank you.
Yep. So this is a look at our overall resident capture rate. So our resident capture rate this year is 67.3, which is a decrease of 0.8% from previous year. That being said, our enrollment went up. Keep in mind, our enrollment went up 359 students because there are more students in our district. So we're capturing slightly less, and we had made a nice move the year prior, and I think this is a little bit of an anomaly because private schools jumped up by 1.7%. That's a pretty big move just on this chart over the last one. So I think that's an area of opportunity for us to dig into what exactly happened there. I don't have those answers for you today, but I think that's an opportunity that we want to dig into. And Kay's team has some great marketing folks that want this information for me to be able to say, okay, I want to focus here. So for them, we get a little more granular and get down into this specific school, and give them that information, and they can start tailoring their messaging a little bit more towards that. So we are It came down a little bit, but we're still at or very close to what our averages are in the overall capture rate.
And best practice is 75%, right?
I mean, you wanna be above, above
70,
70%.
public school wise, 70 is kind of the magic number.
I was actually, when I was reading through these, feeling really good up until these last
I
two
know.
slides.
Yeah, that's the kind of the weird thing about this is our enrollment's trending the way we want it to trend. We're increasing students. It's that private section that I'm just not quite sure what happened that caused that shift. So I think it's just, we just gotta dig a little and see what we can find. So kindergarten is always our favorite to project because it's the most difficult. Traditionally, what we do is get the Hennepin County live birth number and track it versus how many kindergartners do we have historically, and we average those percentages and then roll it forward. We actually saw an increase here. So normally that number is between 15 and 16% of live births historically, if we're really looking back over the last 20, 30 years. The last 4 or 5 for us, that number dropped down to 12 to 13%. But this year we moved up to 15.13. So again, that's a nice increase that we saw, up 2.8% over the previous year. While it's good, how we're seeing live births as a trend, and I think if you've heard from the state demographer and some of the other organizations they've been presenting things at, in general, the state of Minnesota is projected to decline in enrollment. Right now, we're a little more of an anomaly than the average because we still have an area of growth. So while we have that area of growth helping us offset for a while, that will come to an end at some point when it fills out, and then I would expect we'll go into a steady decline. And that's something you got to be prepared for. We don't see it on our projections right now, which is good, but we're projecting 5 years. When I look at our 10-year projection, which we have with the company that does all of our mapping, we're starting to see at the end of that where the crown is coming. That's what we know today. In 5 years, we could easily add 5,000 more housing units. There's space for it, and then that pushes out another 5 years. But it's something to be aware of that is there. So I just want to make sure that people understand that as births go down, so even the Hennepin County number, my feeling is we're going to get a higher percentage of that fairly consistently for the next few years because other areas of Hennepin County are very built out and aren't going to have it. They're waiting for families to turn over homes, not add new homes. The other thing that you would want to note is, so this class, it amounts to 1,392. So the 1986 number there, that's total resident kindergartners. Of that number, we captured 1,392 that attend our schools. So some went other public, some went private, so on and so forth. But that's what the number within our district is. So we have 1,392 kindergartners today, and we're graduating 2,001 seniors. So we have a little bit of a disparity problem there. There's 600 kids swing. Now, we have other areas. We had 6th grade increased students. We had 9th grade noticeably increased students.
Yeah.
So we make that up, so it's not as bad as the number makes it out to be. So I'm not sounding the alarm. It's just be aware that we're graduating more kids than we're bringing in right now. And so we expect over time, you'll start to see that trend go the other direction. Okay, so the kindergarten resident capture rate, this is another good number, that we're currently seeing for all of the residents in Osseo area schools is just over 70% this year. So we're showing 70% for Osseo, 15.6%, and this is just kindergarten for charter, 7% open enroll coming in, and 7% private or home. If you look at that private or home, the number last year was 3.5. So that's, again, kind of reinforcing something triggered people to want to go private or keep their kids as a homeschool for another year, and we'd have to dig into exactly some great questions to be able to ask if we can get the details on who did it, and I think we have that information from our Infosys to be able to perhaps survey and say, why did you make the decision you made? So we'll look into those.
This is the year the babies were born during the COVID year.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the official So 1392 is above what we originally thought that number would be. We're actually 60 or so kindergartners higher than our projection was in kindergarten. Some of the other elementary grades is where we saw some more fluctuations. But yeah, so we originally thought we would go down about 200 kindergartners over the previous year, and we went down about 140. So not quite as bad. So taking all that information on top of, we changed boundaries in every elementary and middle school. So we take our historical information, and what we ended up doing is saying, okay, rather than me going to, and I'll use Basswood as an example. Basswood has this many students in it. We would normally say, okay, give me a 6-year running average of that, and how do those classes come in, and how does it work out? And that's the foundation for what our enrollment projection is. Well, for this, actually, I'll use Fernbrook as an example. Okay, so Fernbrook has that, it's been growing. Now all of a sudden we say, all right, but I want you to take that for just this part of Fernbrook and this little bit of Elm Creek, because that's Fernbrook's new border. So we had to use our system to say, this is what I want you to project based on these numbers. And then we still took our 6-year cohort, how do our classes normally increase, how they normally grow, and applied those in. So doing that, so we get how many kids are attending in there, then we have to add in open enrollees, add in any in-district transfers that would come in, subtract open enrollees that leave, subtract the in-district transfers that go somewhere else. So there's about 4 or 5 components to each individual building to say that times every grade that they do. So if you like spreadsheets, it's fun. So this is the enrollment projection, and this has been sent out to the buildings, and each building gets detail on just their specifics. They don't necessarily get the full district-wide one. But what we're projecting for next year is 2,186 students, about a 0.85 or so increase. For the next 4 years after that, we're projecting anywhere between 0.5% to a 1.8% increase. But we still are anticipating at this point that we will see steady increases as growth continues for the next 4 years. These projections include, like I said, those boundary updates. We are still waiting on one piece of information to go with them, which is we gave families whose kids will go into 5th grade and 8th grade the opportunity to remain in place. And there is currently a survey out with them to try to gather the information of who is opting into that. So we can then adjust these projections so that we're providing accurate information for staffing. So if, Fernbrook's a great example because the biggest number of kids are going to move. Today we show something like 485 kids come out of there and can go towards the other school. There's going to be some of those who say, I just want to finish my year at Fernbrook. I want to finish my elementary career at Fernbrook and move on from there rather than switch to the new school. If you want to do that, that's fine. So we're gathering those kids and saying, okay, who's going to do that? So we project the right number of kids in 5th grade for Fernbrook and the right number at Aspen Ridge, and don't have the teacher hired at the wrong place. So we're supposed to have that information by the end of the month here. And then we'll be putting out an updated version of projections in early January that my colleague here will turn and do his magic and turn into staff.
Can you send us that data when you have it?
Yeah. So this is also a line graph version of the same thing. As you all know, the growth data is one of the important items that ECMAC utilizes to make recommendations about capacity needs and opportunities in coming years. We have in indications from the city of Maple Grove that just opened the Rush Creek Boulevard that crosses the freeway there. So that is that now, and that is the fastest route, by the way, from here to the new school is that route. So now there is a corridor in on the south to go with a corridor in on the north. We've already heard from the city that once that opened, they anticipate and are already getting additional inquiries into development because it's easier to get there. They've run water sewer down a main line right by it. That's enticing for developers because then they don't have to front the costs, they just have to pay the city for it. It will spur more development to come faster. So that's what's anticipated. And we saw that with Dayton Park, when it opened, other things opened pretty quickly right around it. ECMAC will be receiving all this information Monday. So, last item is talking about class size information. So I would like to turn it over to BJ Ermitter, coordinator of pre-K-12 operations, and he's going to walk us through.
Thank you. Thanks, John. We have some high-level information for you on class size. This graph here is representing our target class sizes and our average class sizes using the most recent data that we have available. Class size targets are represented in blue on the chart there, and you can see the OSSEO averages in the orange compared against our regional average in green. We participate in a metro area study each year to compare our class sizes to other class sizes in the region. So you can see there that our average class sizes do come in below our targets, and for some of the primary grades, OSSEO average class sizes are below the region, and as we get into some of the intermediate and secondary grades, you'll see that OSSEO averages are slightly above the region. That is pretty consistent to what we have seen over the past several years. And just for a note, we take class size averages for the secondary core classes, so your math, science, social studies, and English, as we can have a lot of variability within elective courses at the secondary level. So you can see how we compare, and we know that in each of our buildings, our average class sizes may be higher or lower than the average due to a number of different factors, but we manage this closely, monitoring enrollment and collaborating with our site leaders, our enrollment center, so that we can manage any hotspots as they arise, as class sizes start to approach that target. We do not manage a class size minimum, so class sizes that are low in our district, we typically do not do anything to address those. Oftentimes we get a question on what does it take to change our class size targets. Our current class size targets, by the way, were established in 2015 for the 2015-16 school year as part of our grade reconfiguration project. So they've been in place for quite some time, and they have served us well. But we often get a question of what does it take to impact that class size target. And as you can see here, it's a 1.5 million per student per grade level annually. So if you wanted to take the kindergarten class size target from 25 to 24, for example, that would cost us $1.5 million per year. And so then you can see as we extrapolate that out across the grade levels, it's $9 million annually to lower, again, by one student in elementary and $0.5 million for our secondaries. Boundary changes, as John's mentioned tonight, are intended to balance capacity, provide more flexibility. So we will have more information on how boundary changes have impacted our class sizes next year. But what we expect to see is some of our spaces where we have higher class size averages, we should see that balance out a little bit, and some of the low spots should come up a little bit. The intent of that is to help balance our capacity to better match our student population, as is the recommendation from ECMAC and the work everyone has been doing. For staffing, we have an enrollment management committee that regularly monitors enrollment shifts throughout the year. It's very heavy in the August and September timeframe. So my team and I are looking at enrollment reports on a daily basis throughout the month of August and September, analyzing our class sizes and making recommendations on where we may need to make adjustments throughout that period of the year. For the rest of the year, we are monitoring on a regular basis, and again, that enrollment management committee meets regularly to talk about where we see capacity issues, where we see class size concerns, what we're hearing from our sites, what we're hearing from our families, what we're hearing at the enrollment center, and where do we need to make adjustments to impact that class size. And each year, DLTL, our division, holds an FTE contingency to be able to respond to hotspots where we see enrollment show up in places we didn't expect it. So we are able to respond in a timely manner and just deploy that FTE where we need to. And that happens regularly throughout the year as we become aware of issues. And it's a process that has served us very well.
All right. There is a kind of a one-page handout that summarizes the class size information that is available in the packet for you, along with a few other very detailed charts for enrollment, kind of variances that have come through the current year versus projections and the like. That's just for your information. The one pager for class size is really intended so you have that information if you're having to get the question in the grocery store and somebody says, oh, class sizes are high, you have some information that you can utilize. It's always a interesting subject because, you know, are there some classes that may exceed or may hit that target? It happens. It just depends. I mean, the Fernbrook's a good example. We literally do not have a free classroom that put anybody. So we're stuck with, these are the only, this is the only space we have left, so we have to fill. If you look on the variance, it shows Fernbrook was plus 41 students in kindergarten. Well, as we got in August and started, I think we made both calls in August, but we ultimately added 2 kindergarten sections.
Right before the start of the year.
Now, one of them took a lot of creativity, and we actually had to take away the staff lounge to turn it into a kindergarten classroom. So not what we normally want to do, but we know the solution is a couple miles away, and we'll be ready next year. So the teachers can have their staff back, and we can kind of reconfigure that building back to a more traditional classroom. So it's just the ebbs and flows of heavy growth in an area and how we have to react to that.
I would just add too, on times when space is a consideration or an issue, we have deployed additional ESP support, really trying to kind of shrink that experience in the classroom. So that's something as BJ was talking about, that really starts out in earnest. So we're watching that as soon as we start getting those stable numbers in August, but we're able to quickly deploy any of those resources.
So we'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Thank you. You want to ask that question?
Well, I think it's really helpful. I've heard, there's absolutely a cost to change in class size, but I guess I'm just curious of like, can you explain to me, or like what that 1.5 million, like, I couldn't go to, I feel like if I was in the grocery store and somebody said like, gosh, Kelsey, like, I need my class sizes reduced, and I'm like, well, for each student it'd be 1.5 million, and I think they'd be like, what are you talking about? So can you help just like kind of break that down of like, what does that actually?
So it's 1.5 for every kindergarten class to go down by 1 kid in the whole system.
Across the
Across the
district.
entire system.
So, and is that, it says the target, but the target's not a number the actual number, right? The actual average.
The target is the number we use to staff with. So it is a representation, it's a distribution factor for the resources that we have. So for the number of students we have and the resources that we have for classroom teachers, that is the number that allows us to have the class sizes that we have, right? So to lower that class size target would be, we would need additional teachers because we have kids in smaller groups. And that's where that additional cost comes in.
But our averages are lower than that.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
So
This is the,
yes.
Did you get your question?
No.
Okay, because I kind of,
I'll keep rolling.
So-
Because I feel like
I'm
people,
with
yeah.
you.
are we making
Yeah.
okay sense? Okay.
Here's the best way we can explain it. So the airplane's full at 25 kindergartners, right? So that's us maximizing the resources. That's how much furniture we typically put in a classroom for a kindergarten to be able to handle it. When they're doing staffing, they do ratios that also apply to counselors and other positions. So for every kid in a building, you hit certain levels, and we add additional support staff, not only classroom staff. That's just where we start. From there, you have the ability to utilize other funding sources like compensatory to say, well, what are the biggest needs in my particular building? If I'm at Palmer Lake, are my needs heavier? Do I have a higher EL population? Okay, well, we need to be able to bring in additional EL teachers. I may say, you know what, I have additional revenue available and I want to make my 5th grade smaller. So I can use some money I have to change that class size. That's where we start to bring our way down to the averages. And they're averages, I mean, there are highs and lows in there too. So not every classroom, when you see 20 point whatever, or 19 point, I forget what the kindergarten number was, are at that number. There's some that are at in the low teens, and there's some that might be at 25. Typically, we are not going to let them go above that target unless it's an actual building constraint. So it's that difference is a flexibility. That's the flexibility that we have to be able to utilize either other funding or the principal to make decisions on they have certain needs that are higher or lower in their particular building. And so they're choosing to say, I might let this class size go up a little bit higher because I need the interventionist, not another teacher. You know, not another classroom teacher, sorry, that's probably the right term. So there's some flexibility there. And that's where I think, as BJ described it, you know, we've done this now for 10 years and it's actually served us really well. You can see financially how we've really been very consistent in how we spend our money and how we budget. And in general, we're pretty much right on to what it's going to be, even with the ebbs and flows and those allowing that variability and that flexibility for the buildings so they can address their individual needs.
So the target is like the pot of money they get as a school, or all the kindergarten classes, they get this pot of money for 25 students. So to decrease it, it would have to increase that number because you're adding another teacher. That's why you would increase the, okay. Kind of get it? Thank you,
But
sorry.
so that's across the district, but like if a school they could use other funding, or whether it's compensatory or PTO, if a PTO is like, here's, I'm just trying, because I know, but I am saying, like, I mean, we're looking at it like district wide, but like building to building can be augmented a little bit based on resources.
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
The biggest one is compensatory. That's something to do.
Where they can make those local decisions. You know, sometimes principals will say, you know, we've got a cohort of students in a particular grade level that we know would really benefit from really sort of being and having an additional teacher or additional resources to support them. So, provided they have those compensatory dollars, they're able to deploy that.
Like buy down.
Yeah, exactly. You hear that.
So the other example is Rush Creek had high numbers going into 5th grade, right? You're starting to hear a little bit of feedback about it. The contingency that BJ talked about, we have a chunk of money set aside in the budget for and this is really at DLTL's discretion to say, okay, they talk, they meet, and they go, we're hitting the crunch point here, so we need to add another 5th grade class. And so then the group gets together, the enrollment group, and we talk about it and say, yep, go. And they're going to get that person hired to do what they need to do to fill that class.
Okay.
But so that's an example, the 2 at Fernbrook this year. So we did deploy that. I think you deployed some ESPs for some additional.
Yes, we did.
Other places.
I feel like they did it in my kid's school one time, like before the beginning of the year, they added like a kindergarten class.
That's a critical point, because there is kind of that sweet spot in terms of because hiring a teacher, getting them all in place, we want to make sure that, you know, if we're in a crunch point, we want to have that teacher or that staff member in so they can be part of the professional development, be ready, and have that classroom ready to go for when.
And besides, kindergarten is connected to teachers quickly, so you don't all of a sudden have to move kids out of a class or away from a teacher. So.
Okay, that was
So the target is a funding model, basically. It's like your best guess of how this will fund it correctly. Is that what it is?
To equitably distribute.
Yeah, so is there a best practice, I guess, is probably the only word I can come up with, about what class sizes are like optimal? So outside of funding, and maybe this might not be your question. You're the spreadsheet guys. Right?
I'm more the numbers guy. I know there's some thoughts, and that's probably a better question for our learning and achievement folks, because I know there's studies and best practices.
John Hattie's work,
right. And I think it varies. I think there's perspectives that class size matters a great deal, and perspectives that it doesn't have a significant impact as some other things might. So I would refer to them on what the best practice is. But what From a numbers perspective,
Mhm.
as we look at where our class sizes come in to targets, I can say consistently, we don't have class sizes that sit over target. That would be a concern of ours. As we look at our class size averages and compare them to the region, we sit right in the middle consistently year over year. And when we do see things that, I would say, when we were working on the middle school model back in 2018, 2019, we saw that our middle school class sizes got a little too high, right? The middle school class size target at that time was 5. And we had to do something and adjust that model and bring that class size target down to 33. And by adjusting the model, we were able to afford that, and now our averages are back in line across the region. So that's how we look at it from a numbers perspective, if that helps.
A couple asks that I would have when and if we have them available are, could we see the averages at schools per classrooms so that we can notice the change for next year when the schools are balanced? Does that make sense?
School averages per class.
Yeah, can we see the,
Like per grade, so like.
the classroom sizes per grade, yeah. The
Right,
averages
not
of the
the-
school, yeah.
Not the average, right, the actual?
The actuals probably is what I'm,
Okay.
which is a lot of information. But will this, how will balancing the schools impact our average, the balance
So
basically?
like a baseline.
How
Use
can we
this year
show
as a
it?
baseline
Yeah,
and see how it
sorry,
makes
thank
sense.
you.
I mean, that's essentially the charts we bring to the enrollment management meeting, right? I'm just sorry, I'm asking
No,
them a
yeah.
question.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Because
Yeah.
it would be like, is what you're asking like Basswood kindergarten, 4 sections,
Yes. Mhm.
100 kids, 25 students per section.
Mhm.
First grade,
Mhm.
that's what you're asking,
Because
right?
I think the main concern is there's a felt need that a lot of classrooms are really full. And maybe it's mostly at Fernbrook where it's a packed school right now, so it feels full, even though the classes may not
The class
be.
size is the
Yeah.
same, yeah.
But there's a felt pain of our classes are really full. And so if we can break it down a little bit farther and have that understanding, that would be helpful. And then for next year, to be able to say, look, this is what that did. And I always think it's good, I kind of harp on this, like being able to sell what that referendum is doing is huge. Like we have to continue to be able to communicate, this is what you passed and this is why it's helpful. Just showing the benefit. And then why don't we do anything about minimums to address minimum class sizes?
I would say it's related to what we were just talking about, the way
Yeah.
that kids attach to their teachers. It's disruptive to the school building to remove a teacher, right? So if we had a low class size, to remove a teacher and we move that teacher somewhere where there's another need. Now, we have done that in the past during the pandemic, and in some other years we have done that. It's really disruptive to the school building, so it is our responsibility to try to staff in a way that we don't have that happen. And since then, we haven't really seen very low class sizes. I think one year we had low kindergarten class sizes because the students didn't show up like we thought. But that's why we staff very carefully to make sure we don't end up in that situation, and then we really do everything we can to not be disruptive to the school building and the classroom experience we get.
Having been worked in a district where that was the practice, it can absolutely, especially in those primary grades, where, and as a kindergarten, because we just don't, it's harder to predict for kindergarten for sure, but it can be detrimental and difficult, and has a pretty significant impact on our teachers as well.
Culture, yeah.
But yeah, if you think about, you're a school that has one section of kindergarten and we suddenly have 26, 27 kids, we're gonna split that. So you now have 13 in the class. But we hit the target, so we're gonna commit to doing the right thing and saying, we want you within the target. That happens. The other thing that I failed to mention before, when we were talking about compensatory, we talk about it as this big bucket, but compensatory has to be spent 80% in the building that generates it.
Right.
And we have a wild discrepancy in those numbers. So just at the elementary, we have an elementary that does like $1.7 million in compensatory and another one that gets less than $30,000 in compensatory. So huge variations. We go up to a senior high that gets $3.4 million in compensatory. they can do a lot more. Their flexibility in that chart is substantially higher. Now, their needs are higher, so that's what it's intended for. So I'm not trying to downplay it.
Population,
But that's, there's a lesser bucket. If you're a school that has very little compensatory, it's gonna be a lot more difficult for you to lower your class sizes, because you don't really have that much of a tool. You can buy a half an FTE, not 3. So the impact's just less.
I had some just other follow-up questions, but I don't want to take up all the time either.
You got 1 minute.
I feel like he's serious.
I feel like he is.
Like, I'm like, oh gosh.
Well, I better go fast.
Yeah.
That time is real for Tom.
30 seconds.
Okay, and I was more looking at the school enrollment estimates for the next 2 questions. At schools like Rice Lake, where there was a large variance in population of the expected versus actual, what sort of review is done to understand the shift better? And this isn't a conversation, we probably don't have the answer tonight, but could you share findings related to that? There were significant negative enrollment patterns at Fernbrook in 4th through 4th grade, and then Rice Lake 3rd through 5th grade, Edenbrook 3rd and 4th, and then Elm Creek kindergarten and 5th grade, which was interesting. Could you share any information you have gathered about why those occurred? And then and you kind of answered this one, was any follow-up done to understand why the number of residents who chose to enroll in private schools jumped so significantly this year? If so, can you share those findings and how we plan to mitigate them?
Yeah, so we typically, once we project enrollment, we go look back and say, okay, I'm always wondering, okay, well, I didn't do great on these, why did I might have been within my 1%, but there's areas for opportunity that you're kind of highlighting there. The majority that we've seen in the past where that comes is we overestimate how many people will move in a new development. So Fernbrook in those middle grades, well, what we did is we underestimated how many were coming in kindergarten and overestimated some of the next grades. So where we were plus 40 in kindergarten and then minus some others, came in, I think, just a little. Overall, I think we were pretty close on the total number, but wrong places.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so, but again, the more we can smooth that out, the little better it is, because otherwise, now Steve is going, say, that kindergarten teacher you have, can you move to 1st grade? And we don't want to put them in those situations, because that's not what necessarily that person was hired for.
So it's not necessarily like a loss of student, it's just a projection.
Yeah,
Which that's normal.
Much like the
Yeah.
budget, the projection's wrong the day I hand it to you. It's our best guess at the time.
Totally.
So.
But I guess along those lines, I mean, we can't pretend to say this political environment isn't causing, some impact on public education. I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting piece of in what ways does the political climate influence our district, public education. I mean, there's been a push for vouchers. There's been a push for private. There's been a push for, it's just facts. I mean, that's just what people are talking about all the time. So I think that, I think that's why it's even more important for us to double down in our CTE and our, just the offerings that we have, our magnets, and just promote the what public education can do and be. And how we serve our communities, and I think that we can't pretend that that's not a factor for some people, maybe,
Well, and I think that's why it's so important to have a follow-up survey if we're able to do that with people that leave. And I don't know if we are, you briefly touched on it, but I think that is gold in terms of understanding where our target market is, really, what they're thinking and feeling, and that's important.
I'll just add, this really kickstarts off, so we're gonna do a lot of digging in, in last year, we've had our school information fair twice now, and that's been a big success. I really like seeing the number with, we're capturing more of those choosing public options, right? Of course, we want everybody to be choosing public options, but it was nice to see that number go up some, so we'll dig into it further. Even based on some of the numbers that John shared with us this last year, we did a little bit of a different strategy. We've continued to do a lot with CTE, magnets, those transition grade years, the school information fair this year we added presentations and the transition from 6th to 9th. like the whole room was built with
Packed.
people. So like that just felt like a huge
Mhm.
opportunity there. And then even some of like our private schools or even charter schools in the community, they end at 8th grade a lot too. So that's definitely an opportunity that we always tried to jump on as well. Some even let us come and do some presentations. So we'll take, not obviously some are a little bit more apprehensive than others, but it was nice to see the kindergarten numbers too, because that's a huge push for us as well. So we even added a different strategy kind of based on the numbers that John shared with us this last year too. We pinpointed some schools too, and we've seen some success with those as well. So we'll continue to dig into the data and see like what are those areas at.
And I don't want my comments to come off as like it's a U enrollment and like contact issue. It's sometimes the product and like as a school district, what our values not matching what our school district population is looking for, and that's why people left. Is that the difference? So I think that's more the question, not necessarily.
I mean, like we
doing your
did a
job fully.
survey like 2021 and really dug into that. Some obviously a little bit outdated, but like right, we can't offer like if someone's looking for religious education, right? That's not something we can offer, right? And that is some of the feedback that we said.
But I have seen the marketing on like social. I think it looks really good. Like
It
just,
does.
Yeah, it really does. It's very inviting and warm.
Team effort.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was over my neck. I didn't even
It's my
try.
fault.
It's my fault.
I'm gonna bring it home, Thomas.
Sorry.
I'm gonna bring it home. Okay. All right, so we have the calendar that's set here. In January, we're gonna start going deeper into standard-based grading. So there's actually gonna be a point in the January work session that we're just gonna teach the board about standards-based grading. So that's how we're gonna start there. We'll be teaching our scholars as well. We're gonna touch base on update on the Park Center, health clinic, and then we're gonna go over that 1-year operation. Not much of this has changed. I do want to show you the beautiful CTE. Take time to look at that because there's like a beautiful connection of where you can start picking up classes in middle school and how it goes across there. And there's even one area on here that reflects on early post-secondary opportunities and when can you get post-secondary credit, when can you get credit just from our classrooms. So this will be going out and we're very excited to start this with our new CTE construction and our programs and being able to bus our babies to go to whatever school they want to take these classes.
So we're mailing this out? Or?
I don't know that we're gonna be mailing them
Okay.
out like everywhere. I know there's definitely gonna be a handful at like, cause we have registration nights coming up.
So have them available to
Okay.
parents.
I know there are gonna be some of
Okay.
them, but they'll be also.
They look great.
Yeah. Okay. 8:12.
All right. Meeting adjourned at 8:12.
Good job, I do.
You're fired.